Some people have committed heinous acts of violence that have killed or seriously maimed children. These crimes are scarier than ever too. But did the perpetrators of these acts receive punishment? If so, what was their response? Buckle up as we observe their reactions as they receive their punishments and deal with the repercussions of their crimes. Number 4. Devin Erickson. In 2019, a shooting inside a high school in a Denver suburb claimed one teen's life and injured 8 others. A judge sentenced a former student to life in prison without parole, telling the defendant that he had shown any remorse and had failed to explain his actions to a suffering community. Kendrick Castillo, an 18-year-old senior who came up as a hero for attempting to stop the attack on a classroom at STEM school Highlands Ranch south of Denver, died after being found guilty of first-degree murder. Devin Erickson, now 20 years old, was found guilty of 46 crimes, including that felony. Authorities claimed that in the 2019 shooting, Erickson collaborated with fellow student Alec McKinney. McKinney admitted to planning the attack for weeks to get revenge on his classmates for constantly making fun of him because he was transsexual.
I believe we share equal responsibility for everything that happened. No one forced anyone into this. We were both mutually agreeing. This is kind of the pushing point to going through.
Erickson had to serve a mandatory life sentence because he was under 18 when the incident occurred. Erickson was sentenced to life in prison for several offenses and counts after a protracted and dramatic hearing during which survivors discussed their suffering, trauma, and disruption to their lives. Judge Teresa Michelle Slade then added hundreds more years to Erickson's sentence. For all that occurred, I think we are both equally to blame. There was no coercion involved. As we both agreed, the decision to carry out the previously mentioned strategy reached its critical stage. After their senior year, Erickson and McKinney focused on a group of students watching a movie in a darkened classroom. The two entered through different doorways to increase the number of pupils they may mortally hurt. Erickson showed no emotion, but his voice broke just as his grandparents, parents, and sister testified about how much they loved him. He declined to speak when the court asked him if he wanted to. The judge recalled how the shooting had devastated not just those at the school and their families, but countless individuals outside the suburban town where the school is located. He said, "I don't think anything I can say to you, Mr. Erickson, that would make any difference." According to the judge, Erickson never tried to justify his actions, leaving a huge void for a community looking for at least some measure of closure. McKinney, who was 16 at the time of the shooting, was given a life term in jail, but under a program for young offenders, he could be eligible for parole in around 20 years. Number 3. TJ Lane. A teenager from Ohio was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole while wearing a white t-shirt with the word killer scribbled across it in capital letters. The adolescent grinned, cursed, and made lewd gestures. Thomas Hemland is accused of killing 3 high school students and injuring 3 others during a shooting spree. In this case, 12 C-58, brought by the state of Ohio against him. In 2012, Lane entered the Ohio school carrying a knife and his uncle's .22 caliber firearm. Daniel Palmerter, Demetrius Hewland, and Russell King Jr., both 16 years old, were killed together with Russell King Jr., 17, in the cafeteria at Chardon High School after he fired the revolver 10 times. Lane also hurt Nicholas Walczak and is still paralyzed below the waist. While his sister Sadie attended Cardin High School and was present in the cafeteria on the day of the shooting at the sentencing of 18-year-old TJ Lane, was not a student at Chardon High School. Instead, he was in the area waiting for a bus to Lake Academy in Willoughby, the alternative high school he attended. Lane laughed and unbuttoned his blue shirt to show a white t-shirt with the word murderer scrawled across it in capital letters, the very same as the one he wore on the day of the shooting, as the victims' relatives were given a chance to address the court. The victims' family members stood at the podium and referred to him as repulsive, expressed their desire for a painful and slow death, and said he should be imprisoned like an animal. He had been expressionless and refused to address the victims' families during earlier court procedures that culminated in his guilty plea on the charges Lane. When he was given a chance to speak in front of the court, he disregarded his attorney's counsel and gave the victims' families the middle finger while delivering a terse speech. Lane grinned and nodded as Judge David Fury delivered the madman 3 consecutive life sentences without the prospect of release. Number 2. Sky Butcher. The man from Crystal River who admitted shooting a gun through a door and hurting a student from Forest High School entered a no-contest plea to his charges and received a 30-year jail sentence. Before the incident, according to Bouch's account in the newspaper, He experienced an adrenaline surge, but it rapidly subsided and prevented him from carrying out his plan. The 19-year-old suspect, who is not a student, injured a 17-year-old male student, prompting the school to lockdown. He was lucky that his injuries weren't fatal. A circuit judge handed down a sentence to Sky Booch. After the prison sentence, there will be 30 years of probation. His allegations include burglary with a handgun and discharge of a firearm on school property. He is also accused of owning a short-barreled rifle. Butcher is required to serve a minimum of 25 years in prison. Is required to pay more than $14,000 in reparations. Butcher must have a mental health evaluation, refrain from visiting any public schools, have no contact with the victim, and cannot possess any weapons. Additionally, he cannot ask for an early end to his probation. The judge rejected Butch's request for a downward departure, which would have resulted in a shorter sentence. Number 1. Caleb Sharp. Caleb Sharp, the shooter at the Freeman School, was given a 40-year prison term. He will have to go before a sentencing review panel before it is released. Judge Price of the Spokane County Superior Court determined that Sharp must wait 35 years before he may ask to be released. However, the board will assess his rehabilitation level and reoffending probability. Sharp had 30 days to challenge the verdict. After spending more than an hour laying out the legal basis for his decision, Price announced the sentence to the court, but there was no reaction in the chamber. The shooting at Freeman High School was captured on security footage as an ominous silence permeated the room. Amy Strahan, seated in the courtroom's front row, kept a steadfast eye on the video display as it displayed her son running down the second-floor hallway at Freeman, while pointedly wielding a gun. While his parents, seated behind him, closed their eyes. Sharp showed no reaction to the film. He publicly apologized for the first time, stating that he could say just one thing, "I am truly sorry," while his parents, seated behind him, closed their eyes. Sharp showed no reaction to the film. For the first time, he expressed regret in front of the public, adding that there was only one thing left for him to say, "I am sorry." He expressed his regret to Strahan, the girls he assaulted, and the entire neighborhood. Sharp claimed that because he cannot sufficiently atone for his transgressions or carry out penance, he now begs for mercy. Scores of community people urged the judge to impose the maximum term permitted under the law, around 46 years to life in jail, Sharp continued, adding that 3 females were also burned. The public lawyer for Brooke Foley Sharp contended that Sharp should be treated as a youthful offender because of his age and immaturity at the time of the shooting, which would give the judge the option of sentencing him less harshly. However, it appears the judge did not concur with Foley's request for a 20-year fixed sentence. What do you think about the reactions? Did they deserve the verdict? Comment below with your thoughts on this, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please enable the notification bell while you're there to ensure you receive all our upcoming uploads.